please. Let's get a mic check out there. How we sounding? You know what? This video's. There we go. I can hear it. Wow, I've been talking that whole time. What's up? What's up? Thank you. So yeah, I was just making fun of myself for not knowing what the hell my last 2 commits are and just wishing myself good luck. So at some point, I guess I should not do that at some point. But today we're checking out the revision branch, which we will be morphing into a actual work branch at some point, hopefully with this commit. So I guess I should preposition this whole video with what Basement2dot0 is and what the project is. So Basement2dot0, we're an indie game studio. I'm the HNIC, Alfred Long. Corvec on Twitch. Corvec is my handle. So Alfred Corvec Long. I'm still easing into the names here. And right now, currently we're working on a beat-em-up game. And we are in the early stages of, I guess, pre-production. Pre-production and all that good stuff. So this is me trying to prototype everything, working on some stuff. We're working in Unity. We are primarily Unity game developers. I think this audio's better, right? We're good. I think we're good. So yeah, this is my background. Don't mind my background. I'm just gonna be firing up Unity here. And my Visual Studios, which is probably out of date right now on this desktop. And I'm just going to take a look at the project, honestly. That's pretty much my goal right now because I've taken some time off from it for a while. And the last thing I did was try to clean up the folder structure. So now I'm going to look at it again, see how I feel about it. And ideally, I would like to get started on a new scene. And just, start building the game out again where I can and get rid of some things I don't need, cause yeah, coding's hard and it's been a while since I've coded anything. Sandbox beat 'em up. Wow, I've been constantly trying to make beat 'em up games. It's ridiculous. So I believe this is the latest version of the project. I'm gonna go ahead and run that bad boy now that we're on the revision branch. Oh no, you know what? This doesn't seem up to date. Let's go ahead and remote. I may have jumped the gun there. Because I know I made a push recently that should not be sounding like good luck. It should be like, hey, you actually did some stuff. So let's see if we can actually figure out what's going on here. This is the boring stuff, but it's really helpful to learn commits. So right now what I'm going to do is check on my laptop where I know I made the change. And actually, I need to pull, right? Let's see if we can fetch something. Do you have any new updates? That's how commits work, right? They don't know unless we ask. There we go. So we do have a proper, this is the, yeah, I know it already exists. I don't want to, I just want to pull. So let's go and pull those changes down. Unfortunately, I started the project. So before I do that, let me stop Unity. Before I start building some metadata, I don't want. Sorry, Unity. Cancel. So let's go ahead and pull the changes. So this is what we call a pull. So what had happened was, just for those who might not be familiar with Git and the process, I had made some changes to the game build on this thing we call a branch called revision. I made those changes on my laptop and I pushed these changes up to the game build, wherever it's being stored, right? That part doesn't matter. So now I'm on my desktop, completely different system, which, you know, I've been working on essentially the same files and everything for this project. But I need to get the latest version of it that my laptop pushed through. You know, so what I did was I pretty much did like a refresh, and this little icon here is telling me, hey, there's been an update to this branch. You know, right now I'm on this current version, this good luck one, the one I pulled through or worked on this desktop. This is where I'm currently at, and this is giving me a little notice that there's a newer branch, a newer update to this that I can pull into my project, and that's really helpful because I should be able to just click pull and get everything I need and not have to worry about, you know, if anything's broke or whatnot, or if anything is broke, I'll be able to easily revert. Well, let me not say easily. I'll be able to revert back to, you know, a working state or the last state that I at least was comfortable with. So yeah, nifty little thing about Git, definitely helpful. You can use it for all your projects. I highly recommend it if you want to protect your game builds. I have years of versions of this game that obviously all these each little line here is a push that was made, a change that was made. These comments are changes that were made. You know, I go from June. You know, it shows kind of like the flow of work that's constantly being pushed through. Of course, you know, I'm pushing from different accounts. Apparently, no, they're all the same. Let's call them HNIC or A long sometimes. So yeah, I've been June, August. It's 2020, 2019. Yeah. Constantly working on it. One of these comments like completely lost control of this project and everything is falling apart. I think I really like my comments, but they're really a sign that I need to do better. You know, so that games seem to have enemies spawn in front. So like these are more technical updates, which is cool. But like I love these little. I've completely lost control of this project and everything is falling apart. Like, you know, it's just fun. Shitty jump mechanic at it. Deal with it. If you're not having fun, then what's the point, guys? What's the point? I cracked myself up. Alright, cool. So now that that's been updated, so this is where we are. Don't worry about this. I mean, like, you know, don't worry about what's going on there. We're right here. This is where we are. We're on this right track. Organize the folder structure of the project to try and make sure everything had its place. Oh, how thoughtful. Let's see if that is actually the case. So I'm going to go ahead and load the project finally. And we'll see what we can get done today. Waka waka waka. So hope you guys are all having a great night. Honestly, something I like to do, I guess while we're waiting for this to load up, is I'll just talk about the game project itself because I'm really proud of this project. It's a bit of a dream project for me. I really wanted to make an homage to the beat-em-up games that I grew up playing and that me and my friends all really enjoyed playing. And part of that experience for me has been, I guess, essentially the co-op aspect. And that's really what I'm looking to bring to all the game projects that I have under my belt. On these projects here, you know, don't get too invested in what you're seeing here. So I'm just gonna open up the game design document that talks about this game project a little bit more. So I don't think every project needs one, but I think most do. So yeah, Year of the Dragon. Wow, that should be the first thing you see. I'm so sorry. So one thing, don't use that. This is bad. This is bad. Don't do that. The first thing you should see when you open up a game project or a game design document is the title. And this is a working title and it's wrong. I don't want to change this because, as you see, this is a versioned document. So I would hate to make this change without like proofreading it and making sure like it makes sense and pushing that change. So I treat this document the same way that I treat the game build itself. I give them versions and I make sure that they're updated with this change log. So I won't make any changes just now, but I will make a note that I want to. Maybe that's not so bad, right? Can I make a comment? Hopefully you guys are not gonna steal my awesome idea. We trademark our shit, right? So anyway, yeah. So yeah, it's a modern inspiration of '90s era two-player side-scrolling beat-em-ups with the emphasis on cooperative combat and stylish tag team combos. That's essentially what I'm going with Year of the Dragon. So it's a side-scroller beat-em-ups. You know, it's action-packed, stylish. It's a lot of emphasis on team attacks and tag team combos, and also we want to tell a very engrossing story. We want to make sure all that has context for the player. That's just because story is important to us. It's important to me. So yeah, the philosophy of the game. Again, just waiting for the project to load here, so I figure we just go over the project. The philosophy of the game is that it's a stylish co-op martial arts, and it's very important that I emphasize that it's co-op, and it's co-op for a reason. So ideally, from my experience, beat 'em ups have traditionally been two-player games that have very loosely taken advantage of the aspect that two characters, usually best friends or brothers or cop buddies, must fight like a horde of enemies, and yet they never seem to acknowledge one another during combat. And to me, I was like, it's cool, but I want to see like wrestling tag team moves. So Year of the Dragon honors what makes classic beat 'em up games so fun, while also breathing new life and depth into the beat 'em up mechanic through team play combat. So yeah, Year of the Dragon will truly make a two-man martial arts team feel like two badass characters who know how to work off each other in tandem to dispatch their enemies with flair. Like, I want to see people getting thrown into like a clothesline and running off each other's back to like catapult them into the air so they can like do some crazy front flip kick shit. Like, I want something. I want it to look really cool. I don't see why beat 'em ups can't do that. It's a two-player game. I want to feel like me and my friend like really trying to like combo people together. So yeah. So the design goal of Year of the Dragon is to drive and emphasize that teamwork through every mechanic and gameplay element, without making a game impossible to beat without teamwork. However, foregoing use of teamwork can also be a fun, rewarding form of challenge, or if possible, encouraged as a means for replay value. So that's really important for the philosophy, just because at no point, should we implement a mechanic that would result in the detriment of the player. At no point should we make a decision during game development that says like you need to like rely solely on teamwork in order to win this game or beat this. We don't want teamwork to be like, we want it to be super important. We want it to be something that the player ultimately wants to use and it's in their favor to use, but we don't want it to be something they have to use as well, if that makes sense. There's no reason to penalize the player for not using it, but we could also be like, this thing's awesome, super shiny, don't you want to use it? Be like, it's kind of in your best interest to use it, but if you don't, it was like the challenge of playing it like a traditional beat 'em up game, and we'll give you that right too. We'll give you that right too. And to me, if part of the challenge is in not using those combos and stuff, I think that might be a fun way to try to beat the game if we can if done right. But those are kind of the decisions I wanted to make clear for up in forefront with anyone that decides to work with this project and stuff. So I don't want to get too much into the details of the story and everything with the guys just yet. I know I'm killing time waiting for this project. It's a big project, obviously there's a lot of things to load here. Because we are still kind of working on some of it, but so what we can do is, since I am specifically looking to work on the movement mechanic, I will kind of share with you guys kind of what I would set up my project like as far as working off this ticket to make sure it gets done. So I have these subtasks. We have subtasks in our Jira board. We go back to Year of the Dragon, and what we do is we have these general stories, that we work off of, and then we break up everything through subtasks from there. And we have our own way of working these things out, like GD. We have things like art, GD, test. These are like codes or acronyms for the type of like responsibility that's going into these tasks. So as the game designer, this is kind of a game designer team's task. We try to break everything, all the. I'm not going to get too in the project management aspect of it, but everyone kind of has a thing to do, and it kind of helps me just as being a single person working on the project, for the most part, to know what aspects of the game, to get movement going that I need to like get done, whether that be importing animations and and things like that. It's like an art related thing, so I have to put on my art hat. It's not necessarily always going to be like something revolving code, but it's something that I want my quote-unquote art team to be responsible for, even if that means bringing someone with coding experience in to help get more insight and provide additional support. But yeah, so for the game design, it says provide reference material for movement mechanics, which I believe was done. Unfortunately, if you don't have a definition done, you'll never really know. And then we have little comments here about the ticket that we're working on. Okay, we're just waiting for that project. It's almost done loading. Speaking to myself. It's mostly me just speaking to myself. So I'm leaving little notes and stuff for like the coding team. If I ever get another coder to work with me on this, I want to explicitly iterate that when coding this system, keep in mind the requirements to be able to support multiple controller types. As little things and ideas like that come up, we mention them. We add them in the comments just as a way to have visibility and transparency. Even if it's just one person and it's just me doing it all by myself. I intend to work with others, so I would like to have that information laid bare for everyone to have access to when need be. So trying to keep it all centralized. So yeah, again, I'll be working off this. So let me go ahead and make a code subtask for myself. This is me putting on my lead programmer hat and going, okay, we need to get movement going. As a player, I want to move around the stage on all axis. And as our code team's responsibility is to, get the code implemented so things are moving and stuff. So like, program physics, that's a basic start. It might be a little bit more complex. I probably think of a different way to say this that would make more sense in the workflow. But we'll get there as we get there. So this is going to be good information for me to have from the story. So YOTD follows traditional 2D as side-scrolling POV, allowing players to move in and out of the foreground as well as left and right, essentially allowing four-way movement along playing field. So even a little visual would have been cool here. This might be something I would draw up on my tablet and then add to the story. Maybe that's something I can quickly do right now. And I think that's kind of one of the cool things that I enjoy about my Surface tablet is that I do have the ability to draw on it and seamlessly kind of move from one space to another, and I don't really feel penalized for it. It's got cool little features like that for me. So I want to draw on my OneNote for now. I don't have my shortcuts set, which should use my OneNote more often, honestly. But OneNote will allow me to export this, which is pretty cool. So taking that concept from the controller, I want to express the player can move left or right. I'm sorry, just don't mind me. I'm quickly trying to trace up a movement. But it's really hard to depict the left, right, and up, down. That foreground movement is really hard to convey. So I'm going to try and draw like a joystick that shows the direction the player can move, and I want it to convey depth. Not necessarily, just oops. So getting a little ahead of myself, but yeah, I'll add that in later. Project should be loaded by now. Let's take a look at what we have. Just get new version. ADD kicks in pretty hard sometimes, guys. Forgive me. But what we essentially have here is a empty project, which is perfect actually. That's exactly what I want to see because I want to start a new scene. And I already have some pre-rendered ones, some scenes that are already set up here. So this is one of the main scenes that I've been working off of. You notice as soon as I click this game scene, maybe you've noticed a lot of content filled up over here on the left hand side. This is my scene hierarchy. These are all the live live objects in the scene right now, and we can add things into the scene at runtime, which is pretty much when we hit play. So we can have code that will like add additional objects into the hierarchy, into the scene. And the goal here for me was not to work off of this scene. What I'm actually going to do is kind of rebuild this scene from the ground up. I'm not too happy with the end result that I got from my attempt at this one, so I'm actually going to create a new scene. But in the meantime, let me just run this for you guys so you can see what I have. It's a little embarrassing just considering the struggle I have with just some of the movement and getting things to work right and sync up right. You know, I got little glitches where they walk backwards because things just kind of got out of hand there. You know, and I think we might have saw that mentioned in the comments somewhere. But it did essentially have some functionality. I will invite everyone to look at this bottom left. I'm not sure if it works. Still should be my debug. My console window working. Alright, so yeah, so we have a bunch of like little debug messages coming to us from the code behind. So for example, it says Sean, and it's giving some weird numbers. These are just coordinates. I was testing out movement for them. So as they move, you'll see when I move Sean, which is the red one, his numbers will change as we move around the world. These are just world coordinates. And then we have Eric, which is the blue one, who sometimes changes into the red one when he runs, because I don't have a run animation for him, unfortunately. I would have to create one, and this is where some of the issues come in when you're dealing with a project like this without an artist, you know, readily available, and trying to use like placeholder stuff. You know, so I had to slice together what I could. You know, the functionality behind it works, but visually it leaves a lot to be desired, and it's just part of the struggle. You know, when you're dealing with things like animations for attacks, you want to know what attacks are going to have different properties, because, you know, they might have different arm length or different moves sets and different everything. So knowing how many frames I have for each attack is useful and very helpful. But for now, here we are. So they can attack. I believe they both have a basic attack. They do the full attack once they I don't know, actually that might have been one of the issues too, that they no longer do their whole combo, which is really troubling. Yeah, so they had a full combo, but I broke that functionality, which is why we should be testing our work, boys and girls, instead of pushing those changes, you know. So that's something that will change with this next attempt, most likely, hopefully. But something that was cool that I wish I could show here is one of the core functionalities of this game is that what happens when you're attacking an enemy, and by the way, this blue guy walking up and down is just like a basic AI enemy that you're supposed to be able to attack and interact with. What happens is, maybe we'll see it in the console window, is you get prompted. Oh, we killed them. So they do have health. Their health bar is not represented. But what's supposed to happen is at some point when you're attacking the enemy, you're going to be prompted to hit a trigger, or to press a button to respond to an action. And what that will do will instantly make both the players enter an attack animation. And that's essentially what happens is they player 1, for example, here in the red, would attack the enemy, and then player 2 would get the prompt to tag in, essentially. And so player 2 can press the button to tag in, and that will start an attack animation where they both will carry out like a cool, unique attack on this enemy over here. So that was something that maybe got broke in the code here. It might work. I know I ran into a lot of issues with the transition. I didn't get to fully implement transition, like smoothly transitioning the players into their positions to carry out the attacks. And I also ran into the issue where you might need you might need more animations to cover the different types of like ways the enemy will respond to being hit, and unfortunately this enemy asset didn't come with that many, so we'll see. I'm gonna try and initiate it, make sure I can respond. Okay, I'm looking. Look, I saw it come up for a second. It says Eric state initiated. It's not letting me. He's probably gonna die. Or maybe I'm not pressing the right button to initiate. Yeah, he's dead. I would like to get that off. It would be cool if I could show off just kind of like the concept of it. It's not that it looks amazing or anything, but you know. And maybe I'll learn how to debug. Oh, there's actually a bug. I think we have a bug. That's why it's... Well, obviously there's a bug because it's not working. Idle. These are giving up idle states. Oh, I thought these are prompting for initiate. Oh, so maybe it's just not activated at all. Forgive me. It's just itching me. Like, I know I'm not even gonna work on this scene and all this stuff is gonna be gone, but I'm like, let me just get rid of some of these debug logs. I don't think I need those anymore, right? And of course they're only there because I'm a lazy coder. And I should clean up after myself. What other debugs are we getting? Grounded debugs. So we'll clear this. Ooh, someone didn't like something. That probably could be what's happening here, is that nothing, we're getting some errors with the objects. That should be initiating the animation. I'm looking for the trigger. Idle state, idle state, idle state. It might not even, yeah, it's possible it doesn't work. It's unfortunate. Moonwalk. It's just giving me the state of the animation, which is not helpful. I guess I disabled it, guys. I apologize. Whoa, what just happened? I feel like I just did something I wasn't supposed to. Okay. Let's get rid of some of these debugs. So, one of my goals was also to follow another script that I found on YouTube on how to do this, and that doesn't really translate too well when you're trying to stream. So that's probably gonna be something I'll end up doing more in my free time, but I figured the initial like stuff would be fun to show. Of me just getting the project up and running. So I really want to see if I can trigger the combo, the tag team. It's really unfortunate this build was not enabled. Yep. Alright, so I'm delivering false promises. Don't listen to me. Let's get back to the project at hand, because our hour's like pretty much up, so I didn't get anything done, and this has been amazing. Let's make a new scene. This will be let's call it test environment. So what I want to bring into the scene, I have some prefabs here. I'm okay with the stage prefab. Just gonna set up the scene. So I guess what we'll be doing here is just setting up our scene. And we'll figure out the rest of the camera stuff later. Do we have a skybox? I don't care for the skybox. For now, let's do that. So let's see what we get with the stage prefab. This is just a stage that I put together and just connected the pieces and added a plane so that there be something with physics. Obviously, this plane has mesh renderer, which it doesn't need. And then it has a mesh collider, which just allows us to collide with it when we have an object on there. So I'll probably make some adjustments to the camera itself, make sure that it gives us more of a beat 'em up perspective. I believe we want orthographic to get that feel. So if you look at orthographic, it's a little bit more squarish as opposed to perspective, which has that cone shape. So we're gonna go orthographic for now. Maybe that'll actually work out a lot better for us in terms of clipping the camera. Oh wow, it's really in there. So let's try moving the stage instead. Doesn't matter. So cool. This is our stage. That works for me. No codes running. Beautiful. Alright, so the project is getting set up, guys. That's what I like to see. Next thing, let's see if we can add another prefab. So it's great to have prefabs because, as you see, I've been working on this project, and it's nice to have those assets that I've already taken the time like stitch together and just quickly, you know, work on a new scene, throw them in. So it saves me time, and I'm all about, you know, saving time. So let's get back on camera. This is what's going to be a little bit more troubling for me, is when I look at these characters that I have already, I don't like anything that comes with them. I would like to redo a lot of that, so I'm probably not going to take advantage of any of those prefabs because they're older and they're not exactly what I want, and that means I'll have to start over. So the first thing I want to make is a new Sean prefab, and I think I want to do this because I want to be able to move a character around. So if there's a way I can duplicate this, I might take him at his bare essentials. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to duplicate him, and that should allow me to implement him into the scene. He's tiny. Let's just look. It's sometimes just funny when you see these little things as you're building a game. He's like a little tiny guy, and he falls to the stage. You know, he doesn't have any like proper assets on him. So let's zoom in on this little guy. So this is great for me because he's already got a hitbox drawn. He's got hitboxes drawn around him. I don't have to do those colliders again. He's got this icon, which, you know, now I'm gonna start taking apart the things I don't want anymore because I'm just gonna like redo those things. And it's going to be okay for me because I'm going to change them on their prefab, hopefully, for this new Sean 1 prefab. So, can we rename this to old? This will be Sean. Okay. I'm just going to delete this, add it back to the scene. There he is, Sean. Icon can be deleted. We'll delete that. So make sure I am working off the prefab, which is important. Because if I want to make different iterations of him, like our spawn multiples of him, they might have different properties. But if I change the prefab, which is the base one, it'll change all of them. So he has a hitbox, he has a hurtbox. These are just colliders. I like them, they're trigger colliders. They don't bother me, they're awesome. I'm gonna leave them. I want to delete that, thank you. Colliders are fine, we'll leave those. Here are the things I will like to delete. Player controller, we're deleting that. Audio source, for now. Health, Let's delete it. We're starting from the ground up. Player physics, delete. Animation behavior, we're deleting. We're doing everything new. Rigid body, we will keep, actually. Actually, this begs the question. So, whenever we're working with objects in Unity, specifically objects like this, there are different ways we can move objects, or in this case, characters, around the game world. They need physics. Things need physics. They need to have friction to move around and collide with things. So, in order to do that, we have a rigid body, which is just another form of a how do you call it? Collider here. So the rigid body is a part of Unity's like physics engine. It allows it to have mass and drag and angular drag, and you can apply gravity to it or not use gravity on it. You can have all these different constraints on it. In this case, I have constraints where I don't want it to rotate, because technically, if you see here, once we get rid of the illusion of the 2D-ness of it, we see that this Capsule Collider, which is essential for the rigid body to work, I believe. Every rigid body, I believe, comes with the Capsule Collider, which is this pill shape thing you see here. Yeah, so I can prevent that pill shape from rotating along the X, Y, or Z or Z axis, depending on your preference for the letter. And that's helpful for me because I'm making a game where I don't want this. It looks really wonky when you rotate it. Actually, I will give a demonstration when you rotate a 2D object. Look at that. That's so weird, right? So I don't want that to happen in the game world, just randomly as I'm moving, the character around. But you notice like these objects are moving with them as well. So that's why that's a thing. So that's one way of doing it. Another way of working with moving characters in the game world is something called a character controller. So I'm actually going to remove that, and I guess I've just been wondering which approach, and as you see there's this new giant circle thing which we will reduce down into its own pill shape, the height of which we need to be consistent. So, so as you see, like as I'm adjusting the character controllers, like hitbox, the pill shape thing we've been talking about, the radius is shrinking, the height is shrinking. I can change, but that's like stretching it, So what I'm really trying to do is position it to be more on the character. And so in order to do that, what I'll need to do is actually move its center point here on these X, Y, and Z axis. So you'll see as I move along the Y, it will raise or lower it. Cool. So that will help us in the right way, or in the right angle, right perspective. See that we now have this thing more or less lined up with our character. This is now his hitbox. So if you hit any, well, not a hitbox, is now how the game world will recognize this game object as something that can be collided with, moved about, changed position, so forth and so on. So yeah, and even has a slope, which I think you can use that in your physics based calculations to calculate for slopes. So maybe that'll help for things like if this is a 3D object and you have its toe, you want its toe to kind of, slant with the slope of a heel or something, and not just like be like poking out like some weird physics thing. Technical details like that, sure. So yeah, I'm trying to understand if I'd like to, for this newest approach, to go with this character controller, or as I previously showed, a rigid body, which are just different ways of achieving the same thing. And yep. Oh, actually, so there was not a Capsule Collider with the rigid body, which is interesting. I wonder how it applies gravity then. Let's take a look. And one of the best ways to do this is just look. And then so cool thing about Unity is when you're in the middle of playing your scene, you can still kind of manipulate things and have immediate effects in the game at runtime. So I clicked use gravity because I expected to maybe see him fall, but maybe he needs to be manipulated a little bit more. So let's go to the scene and pick up this little guy. See if he falls once we put on gravity. And he does. So I made the change on the prefab, but that change was not on the character itself. So let's find out how far this guy is fallen. Is he just going? He's still going. Alright, so we'll start the scene over. And it's interesting. Okay, he does fall. Okay, he does. Now that we start the scene, he has the default of the prefab. Fun. Alright, so this is our little guy. You know, he's living his best life right now. He's just sitting there with his little animation. This is good for me. This is really good for me. So, this is literally kind of like the drag of game development. Like, you're going to be moving at like this pace sometimes. And I'm looking at this, and I can see now that part of the reason why when you're going with that rigid body, it's good because you can probably just use the physics that are already there. But you do have to apply your own, as you say, Capsule Collider to calculate for physics. That might be helpful for us. But let's see if on this attempt we can get a little bit more understanding of the character controller and see if that might actually meet a lot more of our needs in terms of open prefab, in terms of you know, getting to move the character around. This might help us a little bit better when we're doing character animations for the tag team down the road. So we're gonna experiment, and hopefully we'll build this out modularly so that we can swap out a character controller versus a rigid body, and it won't matter. It'll just work depending on, you know, whatever we decide to implement, as long as they adhere to a set of rules for how they will consume and export data. Sure. Alright, so let's lower this guy's height just a little bit more. So I can make a fine adjustment here myself if I wanted by just entering a number, right? But I don't want to do that until I feel like I got it just right. And to me, this feels good. I feel like it's intersecting with enough portion of his torso and his body, but I feel like if you don't hit that, so I might want it a little bit wider. I feel like you should be able to hit enough within this range to trigger like an attack. And even I'll move it a little bit more out this way. It's to the, it's a positive or negative? It's negative. 5. I think that's okay. 2. There we go. It's like right on his like torso shape. That makes me happy, guys. Sometimes you gotta do those little nitpicks. Cool. That works for me. We'll save that prefab. We'll go back to the scene. And I'm just using that little folder structure there. We can blow this guy up, but there's one other thing oh, he didn't take any of those changes. Let's open up the prefab. Okay. I don't want to override. Cool, we're going back up. Cool, so he's good now. I can blow him up to scale him to like match the height and everything. But another issue is I also want to rotate him. So let's give him 180 degrees. And that will be his default. Migs, what's good, man? How's it going? Thanks for joining. Thanks for joining. We're here. We're doing it. We're doing it. We're making games, taking names. So yeah, set his default rotation to start out there. These are just, I'm just really just nitpicking, doing little tiny things. Dragging this out. Let's see how big 2 is. Don't like 2. We'll try 5. That's interesting. What does our camera see? I'm gonna click on our main camera. That looks decent to me. Cool. He's got his cool little stance. I spliced this animation together. That's why it looks so flickery. But alright, cool. This is looking good, guys. It's looking good. He's got colliders, which is great. Character controller does not apply gravity, so we can apply our own gravity, which will be really interesting because I think that'll give us a lot more finite control of how everyone works in a game. So I'm happy with that. I'm going to take one quick look at our animation layer. So Sean has a robust set of animations that he belongs to. And these have all been grouped up and layered. He's got attacks, he's got locomotion movements, he's got airborne movements, he's got reaction movements like being hit. We should probably make that a state. Substate. I'm gonna call this one reactions. Doing it, Migs. We're doing the thing, man. We're in there. We are in there. Okay, I think I already have that. State. Remove one. Getting a little too slap happy there, guys. Sorry. Cool. So yeah, this is his animation tree here. Eric running. I'm not sure what that is, but I'm gonna put that here. For some reason, it's not set up. So this whole animation tree is essentially the animations that all our player characters will have access to. What this essentially means is, regardless if we're playing as this game object named Sean, or if we're playing as a game object named Billy Bob Thornton, as long as they have this animation, which we're calling, well, this animation controller is what we're calling it, Sean. Maybe we should call that player animation controller. That might be due for a rename. There goes the ADD, guys. I need a generic one. So I'm gonna ask myself if I really set this up that way. So Eric has an override. Cool. I don't think I used that for Eric. I don't think I ended up using this Eric animation. I think I used his override. His override is controller. Yep. So let's do that. We're just gonna do that, and then we'll make 2 different overrides. And what I want that to do is, now when I go to Eric, he's overriding the player animation override, which is perfect. And I'm gonna duplicate this. And hopefully it'll let me duplicate. I can't duplicate. Control B. Cool. This will be the Sean override. Let's move that to brawlers. And when I come to my prefab, I'm going to assign him, not this controller, I'm going to assign him an override. His override. Now, the reason I'm doing that is just so I can keep this player animation controller very, very generic. So when I do things like that, because it makes me think about the structure of the project. I can have an AI animation controller. I can have a player animation controller. This makes more sense to me. And then each one will have their own batch of animations. So sprite sheet is different. I broke up the sprite sheet. Those are actual sprite sheets. These are sprites that belong in the sprite sheet. I feel like I can get rid of this one. I'm not using it. This is just cleanup. So we have the Eric override, which then we have these different attacks for Eric that are specific to his implementation. And what we essentially were doing is taking these little clips. These are just like file clips, animation loops. And we're essentially taking these little clips. You can think of them like how you would think of like an AMV, or not AMV, well, anime music video, an AVI or an MP4 video or something, file format. Think of them like that in terms of, just for now, just for the visual like analogy here. So we're taking those clips and we're dumping them here in this animation controller, this Eric override basically. So the player animation has this layout. This is the controller, the animation controller layout. You know, it's got all these different things. You go to attack, you know, it's got a punch 1 animation, it's got a punch 2, punch 3. So any object that gets to override this will essentially know that they need to have an animation for a punch, they need to have an animation for a punch 2, and they need to have an animation for a punch 3. And the overrides allow us to quickly make a new object, or in this case a Sean object, you know, and instead of like reinventing this whole wheel and workflow, we can simply just say, hey, these are the animations that are required, you know, plug them in here as you need for whatever you need. And the main animation controller, the main player animation controller, will then handle the flow of how we get to those different states and stuff, which is great for us. You know, it makes the player able to perform the same thing with no matter what character they're playing. You know, if I'm playing as Sean and playing him as Eric, I know anytime I press the punch button in 3 successions, I'm gonna get a punch animation from that character, and then that punch animation can look very different now depending on, you know, what character I'm playing. But from a development point of view, it makes things a lot easier. So yeah, I'm glad I did that. I'm just walking through it because that was new for me to be able to separate the animation controller from my brawlers. You know, I have an enemy, I have main characters, tag team animations. That doesn't sound like it belongs here. That sounds like it belongs to animation controllers, right? So let's change that. And this is great because now I'm having new ways to look at my data. So I have these animation controllers, I have this tag team animation controller. It comes with initiator, clip. So now I'm assuming this might have made things a little bit more complicated for me when I do the tag team animations. But currently what I'm seeing here is when I initiate, oh no, maybe I'm not doing this right. I don't think I've actually used this. I don't think this does anything. This might be trash. I'm gonna delete these. The timeline stays. I need the timeline. That worked. But I don't think these things did anything. Yes. So timeline's pretty cool. I'm not going to get into the details of it right now. But essentially what it allows me to do is each game object, I can assign a game object to each of these animation tracks, and they will play out their animation in tune with each other, and then all the actors that are assigned to whatever track they're on will then go and resume their day. So this would be, so it says Eric and it says Sean here, but essentially what would happen behind the scenes in the code when you're doing this runs the tag team attack, by the way. This whole animation timeline would be at a tag team attack for the game. So what this allows us to do is, in the code behind, depending on who starts the attack, they will have their own attack animation to assign here, and whoever is the one that responds to the attack on this animation track will assign their own attack animation here. And you can think of it very much like we were saying, play your animation video. Okay, now play your animation video. Play your animation, you know. And then on this last track here would be the enemy that's getting attacked. So the enemy themselves know, okay, you just got hit, so get hit here. You just got hit, so, you know, play your hit here, play your hit, and it plays like that, you know. So the idea would be like, you know, as we build out these different tag team attacks, we essentially know what the animation flows will look like. We know when someone will be hit, what the animation is going to look like in terms of, all right, well, the enemy needs to end up over here at the end of this animation, or they need to end up over here. And it doesn't matter who's doing the attack, they can do their own version of the attack and it'll still launch the enemy around in like whatever the same directions are. So it makes things a little bit more flexible, I think, and it kind of makes it cool to unlock different types of tag team attacks as that mechanic grows and as I make more of those. So I have that one. We'll be implementing that at some point as we go on. Can't wait to show that off. Again, this is kind of just, I'm working to get the movement going, but I know I'm also like organizing the project and starting a new scene. So I have something to actually work with. So we're getting there. No coding is happy yet, unfortunately. But it's good for me. All right, cool. So we got animations. Everyone's got their own override now. That's his sprite sheet. Why not? Let's just give him a sprite sheet folder. And this is good. So anytime I make new characters, I'll know that the folder structure should be the same. That they too will get their own. So this will be my generic enemy animation controller that will run the whole enemies, you know. So I can probably make duplicates, and this will be like a basic enemy animation controller. And maybe I'll have a one that's more for like long range enemy animation controller, and they all kind of behave the same way, but have their own different animations there. So we'll play around with that as we go along. But it's good to know that the enemy. I'm not sure what this override is, but what I would like to do is create an override of that basic enemy AI controller. And this is going to be Barthug override. Let's give him a name, sure. And he's going to implement this basic enemy animation controller. And we can quickly take that back over to our enemy. Call this guy now Barthug. I don't know why, we were doing that now. See, so for me, now that I'm doing that, I want to kind of distinguish, like, he's an enemy. I'm not sure if this is going to bite me in the ass later to distinguish the two, because maybe we'll have an enemy that eventually we can also have as a player. So this is something I'm going to play around with. Just because my immediate thought is, even if I do have an enemy that I eventually will reuse a lot of their assets as a player, my first thought is that knowing the animation controllers and the triggers, I might have to make additional animations to accommodate for a player playing as them. Or it might be the other way around. I might need less animations if they're going to be player controlled. So it would still probably make sense to make a player version of them. You know how like in games it's like, oh, when I fight the enemy, he's like level bajillion and he's all like decked out in like all the like gear and stuff. But then when you unlock him as a playable character, he's got like a little squeaky toy, and, like you know, not as cool or useful. He has like none of the same animations that he did. But yeah, so not saying that's the intention, but I'm saying just thinking about my folder structure and why I would distinguish having a term like player and then the object. These are our animations for the player, Eric, and we'll see. So yeah, this is fun. Fun. Alright, so now that that's done, we're probably going to be wrapping up soon, honestly. It's pretty late. I did not expect to go this long, so I'm going to let this probably be the end of the video in about 2 minutes or so. But thank you for hopping along this adventure into game development with me. I'm looking forward to bringing a lot more of Year of the Dragon to you guys and keep myself accountable as we work towards getting this game moved along the timeline, because I would like to have a lot of this kind of completed quicker. I will be working on this off camera, more or less. I won't always be programming, you know, through stream, but it is my goal to at least be doing development and doing these live streams on the Wednesday. So if I get any work done before that Wednesday, you guys will be able to see where I've come with the project on that Wednesday as we try to implement newer things and go forward. So yeah, just kind of keep that in mind. That I might not be. There might be some. The project might evolve each week, before we get to sit down and code and have these moments. Hopefully, this becomes a regular thing. We can get into the nitty gritty of the code next week. Maybe I'll end up coming up with a better schedule, or I can probably do this a little bit more regularly, maybe twice a week. But yeah, so yeah, we'll get into the scripts and everything here at some point, because I do need this guy to walk, and yeah, it's gonna be a blast getting that going, because approaching controller mechanics is definitely, for something like this, it's definitely gonna be a doozy. So alright, so yeah, thanks guys. Thank you. Look at this. His animation's actually, so this is as a closing note, I tried to assign him a Sean override controller, but I don't think I actually used his animations. I don't remember assigning him animations. I might have gave him Eric's animations. Oh. Eric doesn't have his own animations. Either way, we will address this when we address it. So thank you, folks. We will catch you next week.